Ah, it's morning again. Coffee. Um, so I lived in Akron, Ohio for a while. Um, my parents moved from Hollywood, Florida, very small town, 35,000 people, to Akron. It was 300,000 people. Plus, it had industry. At the time, Akron was the rubber capital of the world. And Firestone and Goodyear were enormous factories with thousands of workers. And so the dark side of Akron, being the manufacturing district and the working class of Akron, Ohio. I was excited. I was only about to become 13, or yes, about 13. So, Hollywood was very sanguine and quiet, and the beach and the fish and the seagulls and a little bit of social disorder, but whatever. Akron, man, oh man, jumping. So, a lot of people don't realize this, but Akron had a huge music scene. Chrissie Hynde is from there, from the Pretenders, or Chrissie Hynde and the Pretenders, and she wrote a song called Show Me. And the first line is, show me the meaning of the word. And what she's really asking throughout the song is, with a world that is so filled with hate, and how can love survive, and how can I feel love? And Mark Mothersbaugh and his gang were from there, Diva. And by the end of the 60s, that was becoming a major music scene, and it didn't last, but it was quite real. So when I moved there, and gravitated immediately to the dark side, I knew all the places that Chrissy was a couple years younger than myself. I went to Bookdale High School and she went to Firestone, and I knew all the places that she sang about later with the Pretenders. So when she started mentioning places and I heard her music, I was just like, oh man, I was there. She talks about the Flame drive-in with all the hot rods, and about Dragway 42 in West Salem, which was only a couple hours drive from Akron. Dragway 42 was one of the most important drag racing venues in the country. And famous drivers and cars would all gather there on the weekend, and especially for big events like the Winter Nationals. And I became part of that scene. I had worked in the Catskills as a busboy, and later doing some music acts. And I came home with a lot of money. So at 15 years old, I was loaded, and I bought a Stingray, a 1963 Stingray convertible for $4,200, and I hung out. I drag raced at Dragway 42, and I drag raced up on the highway, and I drag raced some streets, which not so smart, and hung out at the drive-in. So I want to tell you just a little bit about the drive-in. By the way, it was that year in that Stingray driving down Market when I heard for the first time on my radio, "She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah." And I was so flipped out by the harmonies that I spun out. I spun out through a 4-lane intersection and came to a stop in reverse, and didn't hit anything somehow. So the drive-in, a hamburger drive-in, not the movie drive-in, it had a central building where they did all the cooking and everything else, with a 40-foot high neon flame. And around this center island were the first concentric circle were family cars and girls and boys and everybody having fun. But the outer circle, all the way around, were hot rods, and they were in order. There were Corvettes, there were altered big iron from Detroit, there were hot rods, and there were special hand-built cars. And everybody had to park in the proper order. And what happened there is there was drinking and eating hamburgers but they were also setting up races. And you'd go up on the highway and drag for a lot of money. And that was a whole big deal. And I had a trick. When I ordered my Corvette, I ordered it stock. And when it got there, I stripped it down of everything, and it had black wall tires. And so it looked like a 327 cubic inch, 250 horsepower dentist's car. And somebody would say, well, his dad must have lent him the car for the weekend, because I had just turned 16. But it wasn't that at all. That engine was built, and that engine was built up, and there was a lot of horsepower, and I had extra mufflers to make sure it didn't make noise. And when they made a bet with me, they made a bet with a guy who was driving his father's car, who was probably a dentist. And when we got up on the interstate, I smoked those suckers, and they would say, you hustled me. And I said, I never said a word. I said, whatever you thought, I didn't say one single word. You just said, well, do you want to race? And I said, sure, how much? And we agreed. You have not been hustled, my friend. Okay, that's it. Enough.